Hi all, and welcome to the first video for Chapter 8, which may either be Module 8 or Module 1, depending on which course you're taking. But in this course, in any event, we're going to learn about table views in iOS. Table views are a way of organizing data into a nice presentation for user interface where a table consists of cells, and each cell, unlike in a picker where each cell can really just sort of be a text item or something like that, each cell can be its own little view in iOS. And here's an example. The first example we're going to look at, which is a list of dwarves. And you can select things, you can scroll through things, and you can make each one sort of as complicated as you like. We're going to do a bunch of different versions of this app to sort of play around with the built-in tools for displaying the various pieces of information in a table. We're also going to look at building our own custom cells for a table view so that we can go beyond even what the built-in cell layouts allow you to do. And we're going to look at searching through a table, which is useful when you've got a table with thousands and thousands of entries. In the next module, we will use a table as a controller of sorts. And this is a common paradigm for iOS apps where you've got a bunch of entries in some sort of big collection of data, but about each one of those things there's more information than you could fit into one of these cells. And so what you want to have happen is when you select a row in a table, rather than just this alert come up, you want it to go to a view that gives you more information about that row, and that's called like a sort of master detail application. And we'll be looking at that, like I said, in the next module. But let's get started now with developing this app. So we're going to create a new app. And this is just a single view app because we're really just trying to showcase the table view. Like I said, we'll get on to using a table view in a multi-view setting a little bit later on. Excuse me. So the first thing we'll do is set up our user interface. It's pretty easy. We'll go to the storyboard. We're going to pick a table view from the catalog, the library. We'll put it here. Table view can be as big or as small as you want, depending on how you're going to use it. For this, the apps in this chapter, we'll make our table view take up either all or most of the screen. For the first two, we'll use the whole screen, and then for the last one, where we have a search controller, we'll let the search bar just be a little bit at the top. So we'll handle the size and the constraints in one go. We'll just make it 0 on all sides to the nearest neighbor, which is the view controller. A table view has to get its data from somewhere, much like a picker does. So while we're here, we're going to control drag from the table view to the view controller, and we'll make it the data source. We actually don't need a delegate for the tables we're doing here today, but we'll do that. And we're also going to need an outlet so we can populate this table. So let me get the assistant editor up. Hopefully it'll bring the view controller for us. Yep. And I need an outlet for the table, so we'll call it just table view. Oops, and no, that's the right place. Okay, so now I think I may have forgotten something, but I think we've got everything we need for our user interface, and we can go start creating our view controller. Now for this view controller, I'm going to copy some pieces from the book source code, but not as much, because we're going to be modifying this a bunch of different ways. For the data which we're going to display in our table, we'll grab that. We're just going to populate a simple array. Oops. So let's see. So let me copy these pieces in and then talk about them. We'll get rid of the assistant editor. So we've got the data structure is just an array of strings with the names of two different kinds of dwarves. We've got the 7 dwarves from Snow White, and then we've got the dwarves from The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings. I guess The Hobbit for these. And then we also are declaring a string called the table identifier. This is used in memory management. Like I said, each of the cells, well, I'll restart this example. Each of these table cells, we said, is its own little view. So as we scroll through the table, we need to reclaim the views that scroll off either on the top or the bottom, and we need to allocate storage for the ones that scroll on. And that would be a lot of system calls, which are fairly slow typically, and iOS is no exception. They're fairly slow in nearly every operating system to allocate a piece of memory. So we're going to try to recycle those, and we'll go through the code for doing that. Let's see. So first of all, let's put in our data source methods. And I'm just going to grab actually I'm going to grab one and talk about it and then grab the other one. So we have a method that returns the number of cells in the table, and we have a function to display the cells in the table. And so this function is ultimately going to return a pointer to a cell, and I'll get the code up here, then I'm going to talk about it all. Okay. Oops, left out a period there. Okay, so this function, like I said, is going to return a good pointer to to a cell, which is of type UI table view cell. So the first thing we do is call this method DQ reusable cell with identifier. We may have multiple tables in our app, so that's what this string we defined up here is for. It's for making sure that the memory management subsystem gives us a cell of the right type for our the table which we're currently displaying. So we ask for a set. We ask the table view itself to can it recycle a cell for us? If the answer is yes, we're done, and we just go through down here, and we'll set the text label to be the appropriate the text field of the appropriate cell to be the appropriate dwarf. Now, how do we know what the available fields are? That gets specified when we allocate the cells, and then we would just return a pointer to that cell. But if we don't have a cell we can reuse, we have to allocate one. So if the DQ reusable cell method returned nil, we will call a constructor for a UI table view cell, and the style we're going to use is default. That's what tells us that there is a text field here, that this is a reasonable thing to do. And of course, since we're going to be recycling it later, probably we have to specify excuse me, which identifier, which string goes with it. And in fact, that'll run. So let's run that and look at it. Oops. Let's see, what have I done wrong here? Those in section. Some method I have left out, obviously. Let's look at the control section. I failed to connect something. Oh, right. What I haven't done is specify that the data source is going to be the data source for the table view is going to be the view controller class, the common convention that we used for pickers. And that's what we have. We can scroll through it, and we're displaying, it's just as simple a table as there could possibly be. Just one word of text per row, and you can scroll through it. So from there, let's make things a little bit more complicated. We can add other components with this same default table view cell style. So let's do that. First thing we want to do, let's add an image to each of the cells, which you may remember from the little demo we did at the beginning. So we'll need to add some .png image files to our assets.xcsets folder. That's the old demo one. Here I want to I'll grab these star images and put them in our example projects XCSets folder. So we're having blue stars for the unselected image and green stars for the selected image. We'll get around to selecting things in a minute. For now, we're just use the blue stars. So we'll go back to our view controller. And we need to modify the code to create the cell because we'll need a little UI image which we'll put in another field of the cell. So we're going to create a UI image. We will set the image field of the view for the cell to be that image. We'll set the highlighted image to be the green one. And we'll leave the rest of the code alone. And we'll rerun that. Now we've got the blue image, and when we select one, it turns green. That's all. So the default style allows there to be three things in the cell. There can be a piece of text, an image, and then a detail text label. And let's modify this to use the detail text label to say whether the dwarf is a Disney dwarf or a Tolkien dwarf. Grab this little piece to do that. And again, all we have to do is be sure we set that text label field, detail text label field for each cell, and we get that changed. And so that's the only thing we need to modify. And it's not showing up. Let me make sure I've got the right cell table, table style. Let's change it to the subtitle. Oh, okay. So while you can enter that data for the default style, you have to use a different style if you want it to actually display. So while we didn't get any errors, we didn't get any change in the in what's displayed. So the change I made was the style of the cell. We can make it look like that. Let's use another style, the style value1, which prints the detail text label in a slightly different place. Should be on the right-hand side now. Okay, so we've moved the information from being underneath the main text to over to the side. And we'll look at one more type, value2, that tries to be a little more artistic and have the main text right justified and the detail text less justified, sort of around a center line. But it doesn't use the image. Okay. So you can use all these, again, are built-in cell styles that are available to you. That may not be adequate for what you want to do with individual cells, in which case you can define your own cell, either in code or using the interface builder. We'll look at that in a minute. But for now, we just want to explore what you can do with the built-ins. And then the last thing we'll add is a way of, well, we're just going to make 2 more mods to this app. We'll handle indentations. And actually, we've already got it. Well, no, we don't. Let me add this method. To our data, to the delegate methods. So create a section for delegate methods. And let's change our table style back to the default. Run that. Why are we not indenting? Oh. When I made the storyboard, I did not make the table view also, the view controller also be the delegate. Now, I've made a few mistakes in this, and you've had to sort of watch me sort of think about how to fix them. I don't think that's entirely bad. There's the indentation we were looking for. Because it's easy to forget sort of little pieces of this, and I think one thing that iOS is quite terrible at is showing you an error message that's actually related to what's wrong. In fact, we got no error message whatsoever for the last thing that didn't work right. It was just that we weren't getting the functionality we had specified because we hadn't designated the view controller class to serve not only as data source, but also as delegate. Okay, we're getting that working. So anyway, the indenting is working fine. Now I want to add some code to cause something to happen other than just change the shape, change the color of the image when we select something. So we're going to add a couple more functions to the delegate to handle selection. The first function, which is also called table view, but it takes an argument, will select row at index path, will return if there is a selected row. If there's not a selected row, it returns 0. Otherwise, it returns the appropriate index path variable. And so this, in general, it's an iOS convention. Something with an argument will select row at is going to run before the thing happens, and did select row at will happen after. So if we select a row, we'll figure out what row it is from the index path we got as an argument. We'll create a message that says we selected that, and we're going to then do the standard putting up an alert thing, just as we put up alerts in previous applications. So now when we select one, we get the alert throwing that business. And the only thing that remains to be done with this app is to let us adjust font size. So you can do that. We will simply add a couple of lines. We're going to add this function to specify the size of the cell. And we've already got it in there, and you can see that these cells are sort of bigger than they used to be. But I need to add also the code to make the font bigger to take up that space. And we'll just add one line to our function which returns a row, and we will make the cell text label font be different. Use the bold system font. Size 50. That should fit fine in our 70-point tall cells. Good failure of that change. So that finishes up the simple table application. Like I said, in the next table application we build, we're going to define our own cells. We'll do it first by defining them in code. In general, anything you can do with the interface builder, you could do with just straight code. So we'll first define our own custom cells with code. Then we'll replace that with an interface builder defined custom cell. I'll see you in the next video.